Welcome to the Awaken, Heal, and Thrive podcast. Today, I'm very honored to have a very special guest, Zachary Adama. And Zachary is going to tell us about some incredible recent events in his life. He's recently made a major shift from being the managing partner of a law firm to becoming a plant spirit facilitator. And he's had some very interesting surprises on the way. And the inspiration I'm hoping you'll get from today's episode, if you yourself, dear listener or watcher, are kind of thinking about moving in a more authentic direction yourself, even when it's outside the mainstream, maybe Zachary's example will be inspiring to you. So welcome, Zachary.
Thank you, brother. It's good to see you today.
Good to see you too.
Yeah.
I've known Zachary for years. We met when we were both actively studying Law of One channeled material, but our relationship has gone far beyond that in the years since. So now, Zachary, would you be willing to just kind of give folks a broad overview of your recent journey and your major shift away from law to doing spiritual work?
Sure. It all began 12 years ago. I grew up really poor in the Appalachian Mountains in East Kentucky. I was always mystically, spiritually oriented, and I really strongly rejected sort of the Judeo-Christian fundamentalist tradition I was raised in. It really almost made me sick, just going in and being in that environment. But I was mystically oriented. I like to play in the woods. Some of the first spiritual books I read were on Druidry and that sort of thing. My metaphysical senses weren't quite online at that point. And so I had this memory of what was true, that everything was connected, everything was one, that the natural world was a doorway to spirit. But I wasn't able to quite feel it yet. It was just like this half-remembered memory. So I sort of, by the time high school came around, I was like, okay, I need to get serious about life. And so I started, made sure I studied hard and graduated at the top of my class, went to college, had planned on being a doctor, but really didn't like that stuff. When I actually had to work to do chemistry and math, it was kind of boring to me. But I fell in love with philosophy. I fell in love with history, political science, and all that good stuff. And so I ended up majoring in philosophy, minoring in international affairs. But then, by junior year, I had this beautiful conversation with my mother where I was like, "Yeah, I'm a philosophy major," and and her very grounded response was, "What the hell are you going to do with that?" And I was like, "Well, I guess I'll be a professor or a lawyer." And at the time, I was studying European philosophy, modern philosophy, and all that stuff, and getting a nice classical liberal arts education, which really turned me into a devout atheist. And, because that's the message I was getting from every side, is that we live in a world of dead matter. We live in a world that's explainable by these mechanical, materialistic laws. And so everything else, love, magic, is all an accident or a manifestation of psychosis. So I was like, well, I guess I figured out philosophy. No point in going and getting a PhD in it. I guess I'll be a lawyer. I guess I'll play the game of money and power, because apparently that's all there is to do. And so I put my head down and went to law school, got through that. And literally 6 months after passing the bar and beginning my legal career, I had this abrupt Kundalini awakening where I was just reading a mainstream article on quantum physics that talked about the universe being a great thought rather than a great clock, this panpsychist idea. And literally, when I allowed myself to entertain that idea seriously and looked at my secretary at the time and thought, "You too are me," and believed it, my heart flew wide open and just lightning bolts of bliss shot through my being. And I just blissed out and experienced ego death.
Whoa.
And so for a week or two, I was just blissed out and in love with everything. But after a couple of weeks, the ego came back greatly reduced with all the spaciousness around it to ask what the hell has happened. And that's what led me to study things like the Law of One. It led me to the practice of Kriya Yoga, which has been my root practice for the last 12 years, and all these other things. And in those moments after that awakening, I sincerely wanted to run away to a monastery and just pray and meditate for the rest of my life because I lost all interest in worldly activity and I lost all worldly ambitions.
Mm.
But apparently my higher self knew what it was doing, and it waited right until the moment I was thoroughly enmeshed in the world to wake me up.
Mm.
And so recognizing that I didn't have an easy out to go to a monastery or an ashram or something like that, that I had student debts, that I had a job, that I had a fiance.
Mm.
I was like, well, I guess the practice is to live a spiritual life in the world, to continue to cultivate my spiritual path, my awakening, as I do this lawyer thing, and just try to do the lawyer thing well. That was a story, a 10-year thing for me
Wow.
of from the initial awakening, being a householder yogi, practicing Kriya Yoga, having a very devoted practice there while living my life well, and gradually reforming the personality, noticing where we're still hung up, where we still have attachment, disciplining the personality, disciplining consciousness, working with desire and attachments, and all that stuff as I practiced law and lived an outwardly very mundane life, but an inwardly very mystical life.
Hmm. Was there any conflict between what you had to do as a lawyer and your inner spirituality?
Of course, I was one of my biggest clients was banks doing
Mm.
foreclosures.
Whoa.
I didn't want to do that.
Mm.
I didn't want to make people homeless. I didn't enjoy that. And how I, justified it to myself was, well, then these contracts were made, by these people who did so by free will, and they didn't live up to the agreement, and all I'm doing is enforcing it.
Mm.
And perhaps there is some truth in that, but also there is not much leverage for the person negotiating those agreements to change the terms. We live in a system that doesn't have a lot of free choice around those things. It's sort of
Mm.
take it or leave it, free choice within a limited range sort of thing.
Right.
But anyway, yeah, there was always conflicts there, and the practice for me, especially when a debtor would call, was to have compassion for them, to be as helpful as I was able to be, and just do my job that was a hard job, not necessarily in line with my soul, in as much integrity and compassion as I could,
Mm. Okay.
and that's what I did. But it was very difficult and challenging all along in that respect. And what led me to the plant medicines was back in 2019. I was meditating with a friend on a regular basis. He was interested in plant medicines. To that point, I had a yogi's disdain for plant medicines or anything that would alter consciousness, any sort of intoxicant, or at least a suspicion of them. But I saw how much it had benefited him, and so one day, instead of meditating, we worked with mushrooms and had a mushroom ceremony.
Mm.
And that turned out to be just the most beautiful experience. I had Yeshua visit, Mary, and I had the angels visit. I had the lion beings visit, the mantis beings visit. And I had all these gods and goddesses visiting, and it was just this United Nations of spiritual beings. And it was just beautiful feelings of love and bliss and all of that stuff. And towards the end of that ceremony, this beautiful golden tantric Tara came to me and she
Mm.
said, "Go work with ayahuasca in Peru."
Mm.
And I said, "Okay." And my friend that I did work with mushrooms with, one of his mentors was Don Howard, who's a Huachumero down in Peru. And he ran a retreat center down there, and they had ayahuasca and Huachuma. So the next week, I applied to be in ayahuasca retreat and Huachuma for January of 2020. I ended up going down there, and it was this, tantric reunion. It was
Mm.
just this incredible experience. And I had this building conviction over the last few years by 2019 that was becoming really acutely painful. Of a calling to be of spiritual service, to devote my life to that, to devote everything I am to that, but not knowing how to get there, not knowing what it was look like, not knowing what the first step would be. For years, the message I got, the steps that I needed to be taking were to do self-cultivation through my spiritual practices. And just continue to do that, focus on that, do what you need to do to make money, try to do it with integrity and compassion, but your real work is the self-cultivation practice that you're doing. And your study. It was kind of like the time in the Hermitage. By 2019, I had several years of acute and just building urgency of a feeling that it was time for me to move into the direction of spiritual service. It was time for me to dedicate my life to that. It was time for me to step forward in service, but I did not know how. My main prayer going down to work with ayahuasca was clarity on my spiritual vocation, because I had this burning desire and didn't have any idea how to do it, or any idea what it was going to look like or how to get there. In my first 4 ceremonies with ayahuasca, it was me and Kali. The spirit of the medicine appeared to me as Kali and showed me that I had been a devotee of the Great Mother for many lifetimes. I was being called forward to renew a contract of service. It would be a journey. It would be a very long initiatory thing to fully fulfill that contract. But this was the opportunity here and now to say yes or no, to consent to it or not. And, I said, hell yes, I didn't have to hesitate. I didn't know what I was getting into, didn't know what it was going to look like. I didn't know anything like that. I just knew that I was being called by the Great Mother to be of service to humanity in some way. I was shown visions in those first ceremonies that my calling would be to serve in some capacity these medicines, but I wasn't quite ready to believe it. And I knew I wasn't anywhere near ready to do it. Working with Huachuma down there in the jungle, it was a true coming home of just a melding of consciousness that happened pretty much immediately. And
for
another
those who
thing,
don't know, you might tell them what Huachuma is. Some people may not know.
Oh yeah, well, Huachuma is San Pedro. It is a beautiful cactus medicine originating in the Andes. It's really associated with energy, with synergy, and consciousness. And I often say it's heart medicine. It lights up the subtle body, increases the amount of energy in the subtle body to sort of clear the way to get into our heart space, where we experience connection and love and actually can interact more with the astral plane. Also, as you work with it, it goes on up into your higher energy centers. And when I do ceremony with it, I do the initiation of the 3 shamanic worlds, lower world, middle world, upper world. You do 3 ceremonies, a day break in between them. And the cumulative effect is that you start out in the lower world and you're more in your body, getting more connected and present in your body. And then the energy by the second ceremony is building up into the heart space. That's the ceremony of the middle world. So you're getting more in your heart space, getting into this state of consciousness of just loving awareness, presence and loving awareness. And then as you go into the upper world ceremony, the energy is getting into your third eye and your crown. And at that point, you can really experience Krishna consciousness. It's just this bliss and love. You just get completely in that space of bliss and love. That's kind of the way it works, and that's a simplified explanation, obviously. But the spirit of Huachuma or San Pedro is it's a grandfather medicine. That's the archetypal consciousness associated with it. Ayahuasca, for instance, has the archetypal energy of the grandmother. This is the grandfather energy, and it's a beautiful, beautiful teacher that teaches you in a way that gives you a lot of freedom to play. Like we will have an outdoor ceremony with Huachuma where people are working with the medicine. You pour the medicine and you do it in a beautiful spot that's energetically potent. And then you kind of allow people to be themselves. You allow people to experiment, to connect with nature, to connect with one another, to learn to sense their own energy. The grandfather energy likes to allow you to play, But then when you get quiet and when you get present and when you're able to listen, that's when the
Sorry,
wisdom comes in. Yeah, he's a patient and gentle teacher in that way. That was my first experience with Huachuma. It was just this immediate blending of consciousness with the medicine. And I also met a dear friend while I was down there, my Parker Sherry. He was a apprentice of Don Howard, and had been living there in Peru for 2 years. And he's originally from the United States. He was actually a lawyer in a former life as well.
ah,
We met down there, and one of the things during Huachuma ceremonies that happened was that I ended up doing some healing work during ceremony, and actually did some healing work with Parker, and he found it to be very, very beneficial and effective, and said it was, the most potent Huachuma experience of his life, working in that healing way. We stayed friends, but went back to the United States, and even on my way back to the United States, talk of COVID was happening. COVID was starting to emerge as this big global thing. And so I came back to the United States in early January after working with the medicines. And then lo and behold, by March, the world got shut down, or at least shooken up, And I literally went from being stuck in an office 60 hours a week doing work, to having all this spaciousness and working from home. And life just got completely shaken up, and new possibilities started to emerge. Parker and I stayed friends, and we continued to do medicine work together. And then by the fall of 2021, a thing was coming on our radar of a possibility to start a medicine church outside of Austin. And he asked me to join him in that work. And I was, I didn't know that whether it was where we were going with that church was the destination, but I knew it was the next step, and so I said yes. And that began my career, so to speak, at the beginning of 2022, serving medicine. And that's a long story in some ways of how I got there, or got here. It's interesting because it was very much about listening for one inspired action at a time, and acting on it, going forward without attachment to outcome, not knowing where it was going to end up, just knowing that that's what I needed to do right now. I needed to go down to Peru and work with ayahuasca and Huachuma. And nothing happened immediately after that, but by March the whole world was turned upside down, and or right side up, however you want to look at it. And then that friendship and that connection with Parker revealed the path of service. And during those ceremonies we had at the church earlier in this year, facilitating those Huachuma ceremonies, it became very clear to me in completely unambiguous terms that the reason I was in a human body was to do that work. The reason I was in a human body was to serve in that way.
Wow.
That clarity has been my North Star ever since. The Huachuma church we started down outside of Austin ended up coming apart by April due to some internal conflicts of the people funding it and stuff. And it was fine. We were happy to leave. There was a lack of alignment there. But we had some beautiful healing, beautiful ceremonies down there, and started forming a beautiful community. When things fell apart there was this question mark or that hung over me. It was like, well, Spirit laid out the red carpet to enter onto this path of service. At the medicine church down there, I had a salary and security, and I was also doing some legal work. And everything just got tied up perfectly with the law practice and put a bow on it. Cases that had been going on 5 years ended at the end of 2021. And I was able to walk away from the law firm and give my interest to my law partner with just very little effort. It was just like the exit sign was there. Everything was perfect. I was going to this salaried job down in Austin where I was going to be able to serve medicine and do legal work, helping run the nonprofit and all this. So it was an easy yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had, 4 months of serving the medicine there. I got this dazzling clarity that serving the medicine was, while I was in a human body, it is what I came to do. That this medicine path was my purpose for being here and how I could most serve in the highest way. And then the security fell away.
Hmm.
The training wheels came off. And then the question arose, what now? And I had the temptation, I had the thought very briefly that maybe the thing to do is to go back to practicing law. And I call that my dark night of the soul, because I actually explored some of those possibilities. I applied half-heartedly for a job as an assistant U.S. attorney and just sent in my resume, no cover letter, didn't think much about it. And then Parker and I got together and was like, well, I think we should try to continue the work. What does that look like? And we thought about that a bit, and then we ended up starting Smiling Jaguar Retreats, which we facilitate, shamanic immersives, medicine work. And we were having our first immersive in Sedona. I believe it was June. And lo and behold, I got an email a week before that from the U.S. Attorney's Office saying, hey, you've been selected for an interview to be a assistant U.S. attorney, and it'll be next week while you're in Sedona.
Whoa.
And I was like, oh, thanks for that, Spirit, for helping me refine my intention and my commitment. And it was an easy, I didn't have to think twice about it. I always say that I often use my calendar conflicts as a way of discerning my priorities.
Mm.
And so I was like, well, that's an easy one. I shot back, I'll be busy next week. I'm sorry. I'm no longer interested in this position. And so we ended up having our first immersive down there in Sedona. Had a beautiful time. And after that, we ended up going, leading a group down to Peru on a Huachuma pilgrimage with a teacher and maestro we work with down there, Don Martin, for 2 weeks. And it was just a transformative, incredible experience. And we had some other events, and the medicine work was going well. Our retreats were filling up, and very optimistic about the path and everything that was unfolding. And then a tragedy struck again in early October. I was at home making medicine for one of our upcoming retreats, and I got a call from a friend saying that my brother, my partner in the medicine, Parker, had been in an accident, in a diving accident, and had suffered injury. And initially you're just kind of stunned and like, okay, I don't know what's happening, and I don't know how to react to it, so I'm just going to observe. And I had planned on going to Tamara to do a workshop there on intentional community. And I ended up canceling that and flying down to Austin to where Parker was. And it turned out, as a result of a diving accident while swimming, he broke his neck and was going to be a quadriplegic with a breathing tube. Or he could, not do the surgery and just leave his body. And he was lucid and aware enough to say, I choose to leave my body. And 2 days after the accident, he transitioned. He had his ascension. And he left in a beautiful way, showing us how to die with grace. Surrounded by literally hundreds of people came to see him in the hospital to wish him well. And he was just, I know you know him, knew him, and he's just such a beautiful, loving man, and just a true shakaruna. But he went out on a wave of love. And then again, the question arose soon after, what now? Another set of training wheels came off. Having that partner in the medicine, that was no longer there.
So
question of,
what were each of you doing in the ceremony? What was his role? What was your role up to that point?
what emerged from that was that, I was making the medicine and pouring the medicine and doing a lot of the healing work,
Mm-hmm.
and he was just absolutely phenomenal at forming community, at facilitating in that way,
Mm-hmm.
and also facilitating in ceremony and helping in ceremony and stuff. And our ceremonies, we did them together. But he was the heart and soul of the outreach, of building community, of gathering people into ceremony, to and sort of convening them and that sort of thing, and reaching out to people. And the partnership that emerged was I really focused on the medicine, I focused on the healing, and in ceremony and that sort of stuff. And he focused on the building community, the convening of the ceremonies, and getting the people and all that sort of stuff. And he was very much a people person, and
Mm.
just loved people, loved connecting, loved building community. And that was where his passion was, and my passion was the medicine and the healing part of things.
Mm-hmm.
And we had lots of overlap. It was a beautiful partnership in the sense that I could fully say, I trust you to do that, and I don't have to worry about it.
Sweet.
The same as he could say, I trust you to do that, and I don't have to worry about it, about my part of things. We had a true and beautiful partnership and friendship in the medicine. And then when he left his body, there was that question there, what now? You know,
Mm.
again, I had the thought, well, maybe I need to go back and practice law. Maybe that's what the universe is telling me. Maybe I need to try to find a safer path. Literally, when I had that thought, I felt like I was crawling into my own grave. It
Mm.
was like, that's not why you came to be here. That's not why you're in a human body.
Mm.
And what would you be serving if you did that? You'd be
Mm.
serving your own desire for comfort, your own desire for the known, your own desire for some illusory stability.
Mm.
And that's not who you came to serve. You came to
Mm.
be of service to others. And so I decided to continue on with the work, and have done so. And we've continued to have ceremony. We're about to leave for Peru here in about a week. Be working with grandmother down there, and then Huachuma, with doing the Huachuma pilgrimage again, and have ceremonies that are building up throughout all of next year. My calendar's filling up with ceremonies, some more private, some more open. We'll be returning to Sedona in April.
Yeah, I should interject here because you're
Yeah,
giving time references. We're recording this on December 27, 2022, in case anyone's
right.
wondering what's he referring to in terms of actual times here.
Yeah, so we're meeting at that beautiful time between Christmas and New Year's.
Yeah.
Between the old and the new.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's been the journey, brother, and it's been a path of initiation for sure.
I haven't hardly said a word because your monologue has been just fascinating. I don't need to put my words in here just yet. So now it's time.
Yeah,
Thank you for being so eloquent.
yeah. Thank you, brother.
What I'm trying to do here is anticipate what are the listeners or viewers going to be wondering about as they hear all this. And one question that might be arising for them is people might be under the impression to be a plant spirit shaman takes
Mhm.
years and years of dedicated training and deep immersion.
Yeah,
And they say, my God, the guy just started doing San Pedro and all of a sudden he's serving it. What
yeah,
qualifies him to do that? Can you
yeah.
address that?
Well, it's complicated, and I honestly have at times had some imposter syndrome around that, because I would not have stepped forward to do that myself.
Mm-hmm.
I did it because I was asked. I was asked by my brother Parker, who had been an apprentice of a Huachumero down there in the jungle
Mm-hmm.
for several years. I stepped forward to serve in that way because I was asked.
Mm.
And I had to work through a lot of my own internal resistance to it. Initially the resistance was, well, I'm a yogi, I'm not a shaman.
Mm.
And I had some internal tension between those two things. And then I was also had, well, what qualifies me to do this work? I had some belief that you really should be an indigenous person to do this work. I'm the wrong color.
Mm.
I have the wrong genes to do this work.
Mm.
And so I had all those thoughts arise around it. yet the medicine was telling me something different.
Mm.
And I also had this invitation from my brother Parker, who I trusted, and I trusted his experience with the medicine. I've only been working with plant medicines about 4 years. I've been on a dedicated spiritual path in this lifetime for at least 12.
Mm-hmm.
The Kriya Yoga path I've been on, working with the Kundalini energy and different things. I was working with energy and doing healing work years before I started working with plant medicines.
Mm.
I've been doing healing work in that way for about 7 years. The plants were sort of the next step.
Mm-hmm.
I was already doing the healing work, working with energy, transmuting energy, doing work that looks shamanic. And then the plants found me and they're like, hey, let's be partners, you know.
It makes me wonder. One realization that's gotten a lot stronger for me in the last year or so on my own path is
Yeah.
that if you do your own personal work of healing and awakening,
Mm-hmm.
and you become transparent enough for the divine forces to work through,
Yeah.
then the need for a lot of specific training and apprenticeship is less or non-existent. And
Yeah.
if you're open and clear enough, then whatever you need to do can be channeled through you in the moment.
That's absolutely right. That's what I found. The Kriya Yoga practice I've been engaged in has been one of self-emptying.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a practice of becoming a hollow bone for spirit.
Mm.
That's been the path that I've been on for 12 years.
Mm.
And by the time I got to plant medicines, I really didn't have a lot of personal work I needed to do as far as like healing trauma and stuff like that. There continues to be healing, there continues to be teaching.
Mm-hmm.
It feels more like teaching,
Mm.
but I continue to learn from them. But I didn't have this long path of needing to do healing personal work in order to be a hollow bone and merge my consciousness and be a conduit for the consciousness of the medicine.
Okay.
And so, like you were saying, and so the way it worked for me, and you played a big part in this, was that I got the invitation from my brother Parker to serve medicine with him. I knew I was not prepared. I knew there was something else I needed to do to be prepared.
Mm.
Spirit told me to go visit Asheville, where you live. And lo and behold, at the potluck, you introduced me to a mutual friend of ours who serves medicine, grandmother medicine. And I had seen how beautifully you had unfolded since you had been doing that work. And I was like, there's something to that. I
Mm.
need to go see what that's about. And setting with grandmother almost monthly
Mm-hmm.
for a year before, is what prepared me to serve.
Mm.
And she showed me the ins and outs. She showed me all these different ways of working with energy and consciousness, and taught me how to serve the grandfather medicine.
Wow.
Yeah, and so she's been a huge teacher there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have to report similar experience. My life has been profoundly transformed by working with Mother Ayahuasca myself, and
Yeah,
there's no way I could do a fraction of what I do now if it weren't for her.
yeah,
So,
yeah. She teaches us how to serve.
yeah, she's
Yeah,
she's all about that.
yeah, she really does.
Mm. I'm getting teary here.
It just means the heart is overwhelmed.
Yeah, it's a good feeling actually.
Yeah,
So, as you move forward, it sounds like the financial security you thought you had has gone away. There's no paid
yeah,
gig like there was initially.
right.
But you're saying your gigs are booking up for 2023, and
Yeah,
it sounds like you've got a financial foundation where you're going to be able to support yourself by doing the plant spirit work and the
mhm.
related, shamanic and spiritual stuff, right?
Yeah, it seems to be the case, and it all seems to be shaping up, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But and it's been an interesting journey, because at times there is the fear that enters, and to like, well, will I be supported?
Mm.
That fear arises. Will I be supported?
Mm-hmm.
And I've always had this part of me, this renunciant part of me, that really just wants to put on, a monk's robes and just go into a hermitage or an ashram and just renounce all attachment and the householder lifestyle. Because honestly, the only interest I have in being in the world is to be of service.
Mm.
I really, most of the stuff that happens in the world at the human level is kind of boring to me. It's just not that interesting. I love nature, and I love spiritual community, and I love seeking, continuing to cultivate my own awakening.
Mm-hmm.
But there's not many things in the world at the level of human desire that interest me.
Yeah, I remember you sent out a newsletter just recently talking about a forced stopover in Las Vegas because a
Right.
flight got delayed and you were just bored and stiff. You couldn't wait to get out of
I
there.
was really bored. I was so bored, and I don't know if it's a matter of purity or lack of imagination. I may just not have enough imagination. But yeah, I spent $200 on the slot machines, and it was the most boring video game of my life.
Oh, wow.
And because I didn't care if I won or lost.
Oh.
It did not matter one way or the other. But yeah, so having that monastic aspect to my being, I was like, okay, so you want to renounce the world, and you're happy to go forward and get your sustenance from a begging bowl.
Mm-hmm.
But why do you have resistance to this?
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
If you want to be a monk with a begging bowl, why do you have resistance to the risk inherent in this path of service where you're depending on those you serve to support you?
Good point.
And so I was like, if I have to, I will be the monk with the begging bowl. And I'm willing to go. I'm willing for it to get to that if it needs to, because otherwise I really don't. I'm letting go of those attachments to comfort and security, and what material resources I have, I wish to use them in a devotional way, in service to others.
Classic law of one, service to other.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if someone's watching this and they're thinking, well, it's fine for that guy, but someone who's feeling the call to us, whatever their own form of service is, whether it involves plant spirit or not, just there's so many gazillion ways to show up and serve as each person's uniquely guided. Do you have any thoughts you can share with those people from your own experience that can give them any comfort or confidence in moving forward in this sometimes really scary, non-traditional way?
The first thing is to listen,
Mm-hmm.
And continue to listen to spirit, listen to intuition, and just listen to that and step forward in faith and trust, and just follow the breadcrumbs, so to speak. Beyond that is continue to do your personal work.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most important thing you can do. If you wish to be of spiritual service, you must be fit for service. So continue to do your spiritual work, prioritize that. If you're in a place where you don't know what else you can possibly do in order to step into your mission, double down on your personal work. Continue to get clearer and clearer and more established in your true self, in your awakened presence. So, do your spiritual practices, listen, follow the breadcrumbs, follow intuition. Also recognize that, in my experience, this is a path of initiation. You will be tested. Because and the bigger the mission that you're stepping forward into, the more severely you will be tested. And in my experience, the spiritual path ultimately is one of renunciation, whether you're in an ashram or you're in the world. And perhaps it's easier to give up our attachments to things when they're not available to us. When we're in the security of an ashram, which can become a prison, a spiritual prison, it can be really easy to give up sex when there's no sexy people around.
Yeah.
Or your attachment to sex, rather, because I don't think there's anything wrong with sex, but it's our attachment to it can be problematic sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's easy to eat that healthy diet and give up alcohol and gambling and all that stuff when It's not available to you.
Mm-hmm.
But when you can walk in the world and with all of its temptations, all of its beauty and all of its ugliness, and look around and say, even with this buffet before me, all I truly want to do is be of service. All I truly want to do is to do those things that make me more awake, more conscious. All I want to do is to let go of everything that's not true. All I want to do is to be more at one with the infinite creator.
Mm.
That's true renunciation.
Mm.
That's renunciation without a shadow.
Mm. And from the sound of it, you're not giving up anything that's actually important, and what you're gaining is just valuable beyond imagination.
Infinite love, infinite bliss, infinite joy, infinite peace.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's hard to get bored with that.
True. Wow. Thank you. I'm feeling our vibe and feeling a possible sense of moving toward completion here, but I want to check what more do you feel wants to be said before we move toward closure here?
Just that I love and appreciate you, brother. Love and appreciate you and all you do. I appreciate your dedication to being of service, and I appreciate your attention to the details, and I appreciate your mastery in mastering the details of that are the technical things that are necessary to be of service. And you've been a beautiful friend and guide on the path, and I'm just really grateful for you, and I love you, and Spirit Song, and I just honored to have you both a part of my life.
Oh, well, I can assure you the feeling is totally mutual. You inspire me, and seeing you move so courageously into this path, just diving in so completely is an inspiration to me on my own path. So thank you for inspiring me.
Appreciate that.
And if someone wants to get involved with you, if they're, I might be interested in one of his trips or getting involved somehow, how would they contact you?
They can go to ZacharyAdama.com.
You better spell that.
Zachary Adama, Zachary, Zachary, Adama, Adama.com. If they want to do some sort of individual sessions or healing work with me. If they're interested in the immersives and the retreats, that would be smilingjaguar.com. And the best way to do that is to join our newsletter. And that's where I tend to advertise our upcoming events.
Okay.
And I also have the story of the medicine, the story of my own medicine work in there too. So.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Any other loose ends at all before we call it a wrap?
I don't think so.
Thank you so much. I just feel the energy just so exquisite right now. So thanks for. I've known you a long time, and your energy just gets more and more amazing over the years.
Yeah.
So
you too, bro.
Fun to watch. Okay. Thanks so much for being on Awaken, Heal, and Thrive, Zachary.
Thank you, Benjamin. Talk soon.
If you enjoyed this podcast, you might also like my free online mini course. It's called Instant Divine Assistance, your free guide to fast and easy awakening and healing. It'll teach you how to invoke your own embodied awakening and healing and put it all into a simple daily practice. You can also check out my best-selling book that develops these ideas further. It's also called Instant Divine Assistance. In its first week, it hit #1 on Amazon in 11 categories and has tons of 5-star reviews. Finally, I have an online membership called Awakening Plus, where you can significantly speed up your spiritual evolution. Its slogan is also the name of this podcast: Awaken, Heal, and Thrive. You'll find links to all this wonderful stuff in the show notes.